And it's like her voice kind of echoed in my head for, a few hours. You're poly, I'm not. You're poly, I'm not. And it's like, oh my God, I'm poly.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We always strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy and positive approach to non-monogamy.
However, everyone approaches this a little differently, and at its core, our show is about hearing and learning from different experiences and approaches people have. With that in mind, it's important to remember that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily represent those of our own.
It's also important to remember that we aren't doctors or therapists and that we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on this show.
We should also let you know that this podcast will hopefully include some explicit language. So, if that kind of thing offends you, you should probably keep listening until it no longer does. If you're under 18, we'd suggest finding a different show or gather up your parents and listen as a family. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 32. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a exciting interview with Kat and
They're
Flick.
all exciting.
I know, I always say that, but they're always exciting.
Yeah, Kat and Flick from the Wet Coast podcast, or On the Wet Coast podcast.
Yeah, get it right.
I got it right. I always get it right. I got to say their name twice because of that. So, anyway, they come and join us. We have an awesome conversation. We talk about swinging. We talk about polyamory. We discuss mental health within the polyamory and swinging worlds, and something we haven't really talked about. So we wanted to upfront say thank you to them for taking the time to chat with us. And maybe we'll just take like 18 seconds to mention two things that we love as resources that we both use. The first is stdcheck.com. Use the links on our website. You get $10 off your testing panel, which is, in our opinion, the easiest way to get tested for STDs and STIs. Super easy, super the best, I think is how you say that.
Okay, sure. The other resource is Cassidy, the dating website for, well, you don't have to use it for dating, I guess. You can use it for meeting people for fucking or friends or whatever you want, I guess.
It's also super the best.
Yeah, super the best. Anyway, please use the links on our website if you're interested in giving it a shot. You can get a free 30-day trial using that link, or if you leave us a review on any podcast platform, you can get a free 90-day trial. I think that's it. Let's go into this interview.
Yeah, this is a short one.
Yeah.
We could just sit here in silence for like 2 or 3 minutes.
No, let's go.
Thank you both for joining us all the way from exotic Canada. Is that correct?
That's right.
It is right.
So
we've got the Wet Coast is Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah, we've got Kat and Flick, who also have a podcast and are some New York Times bestselling authors, perhaps, or just.
Well, hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be a New York Times bestselling.
Excellent. Well, yes. For anyone who's not familiar with you, do you mind sharing a little bit about who each of you are and just high level, maybe how you both identify and how you identify in terms of your relationship style?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Kat Stark, and okay, apparently that's all I got.
That's it. I'm Kat Stark. The end. Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in this week, guys.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Kat Stark.
We're all Kat Stark.
Yeah.
I think I just kind of forgot what else I was supposed to say.
That's okay.
Okay. So I am Kat Stark, and I am a blogger and podcaster and author of the memoir Yelling in Pasties, The Wet Coast Confessions of an Anxious Slut. As you can tell from that title, I definitely identify as someone with mental illness. I battle depression and anxiety, so that definitely can make my non-monogamy exciting. And I identify as non-monogamous, as polyamorous. I wouldn't say that we're swingers, but we sometimes swing, or we're just like really bad swingers. I often just refer open relationship. We have been married for nearly 22 years, but have been open for the past like 3.5.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little fuzzy because,
Yeah.
when you open, is it the day that you seal the deal with somebody, or is it when you make plans to and
Right.
like
Yeah, when you start the conversation.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
for
we've
sure.
talked to people who had theoretically been open for a year or more, but hadn't actually found anybody to that they wanted to be open with yet. So yeah, it's like maybe you're open, but you just aren't open at that particular moment.
Yeah.
Sure. So how did those first conversations start for you two?
Well, it started with going to see Dan Savage live, and then having conversations after the show. One of the things that really resonated with both of us was Dan saying, you spend a lot of time worrying about whether your partner is attracted to other people when they want to fuck other people, and they do, just like you do. And and so that when you acknowledge that you do, and and realize that what you've been trying to kind of what you sort of the thing you've been fearing about your partner all along is certainly definitely true. It takes a lot of the kind of stress and pressure out of that, and so that kind of opened the door to talking about fantasies. Hey, maybe we'll have sex at a sex club in front of people. Maybe we'll find somebody to have a threesome with, and and then yada yada yada. Next thing you know, we're polyamorous and have a girlfriend, and pretty much the train has left the tracks.
So you went straight to the polyamory route. You didn't stop off at the swinger station for a little while?
We definitely started with swinging. Well, we started with a threesome with one of our friends. The classic thing you're not supposed to do is ask, one of your single bisexual friends to have sex with you. But we did, and she was into it. So we had a threesome, and it was great. Well, it was kind of weird, mostly because we did it in a hotel and then all spent the night together. And basically, once the sexing was done, I was done and wanted to be by myself and just read a book and hide. And we all just had to hang out together. And so it was kind of awkward that way, but like all the sexing part was like amazing.
Yeah, I think if you were in that situation now, you just haul out your Kindle and just,
and just be like, I'm going to be over here, possibly with a blanket over my head.
It's a good thing they're backlit now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then after that, we were like, okay. We started listening to Life on the Swing Set and a bunch of other podcasts. I started reading everything I could get my hands on, Opening Up, The Ethical Slut, just all the books I could find. And we're like, hey, let's try swinging. Maybe we're swingers. And went on Cassidy and found a couple that was local, and they were like, do you want to come over tonight? And we were kind of like, it's Thursday. But we were willing to go the next night and ended up, having a really good swinging experience with them. They were very experienced and, were really good to us being like complete noobs and being nervous and not sure.
Oh yeah. They were really great, super, super patient. And
yeah. That's a wonderful first couple to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No drama at all. Like just really, really chill people.
Yeah. And we fooled around with them a few times, and then on OkCupid met a few other couples and kind of tried it a few times and just didn't ever really find the right 4-way spark. And so kind of decided that maybe we should date separately.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I started dating a friend that I had known for like 10 years. And I think you kind of inceptioned us, like kind of put the idea in our heads, and we're like, it's too bad that we're not those kind of friends. And then later it's like, but could we be? And and so that was really nice. It was really nice to have that kind of relationship and experience with someone that I just really trusted and had a great relationship with already.
Yeah.
And, and you started seeing a couple fellas as well, and got to experience some heartbreak nice and early.
Yeah,
that was really great.
Yeah.
So what was the timeline roughly between when you first went to Dan Savage to we're now on Cassidy to swinging's maybe not the right strategy, maybe we'd be better off doing like some separate poly stuff? What did I get roughly the timeline? What did that look like?
It was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was like a couple months between seeing Dan Savage and having those conversations and having that threesome with our friend, and then it was maybe another month or 6 weeks before we had that first experience with another couple, and we're driving home like almost in shock, like I can't believe we did that. I can't believe this is a thing that we do now. And then probably again another few weeks after that we're like, well, why don't we try seeing other people? We kind of went through Tristan Taormino's book, Opening Up, and went through the checklist that she has, and kind of added our own sort of ideas to that, and sort of drafted an idea of a relationship agreement, and that was a really great starting point. What we kind of found though is that over time, a lot of the ideas and the sort of the rules that we had just kind of didn't seem necessary as long as we were communicating well and just talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And have you guys ever talked about anything like this in the 22 years, or I guess 19 years before this in your relationship?
Well, fairly early on in our marriage, we were kind of open. Well, I guess we were open in that I was allowed to fool around because I'm bisexual, and I didn't know that until we were together.
Uh-huh.
We got together very young. Like, we met when we were 20, just about turning 21. So, I hadn't had experiences. And so a few years into our marriage, we kind of set it up that I could have some experiences with women. And so just a couple times over the next 5 years or something, I had some experiences with friends of ours, and then was kind of like, cool, I've done that. It's nice. Then, yeah, I guess we'll get back to regular programming.
Yeah. And before I met Kat, I was kind of naturally polyamorous, but we didn't really have language for that at that time. For me, I just kind of felt like, I was an asshole who could be in love with two women at once, and it really complicated my life. And, and so for a couple of years, I had a girlfriend, and we had a friend, and we basically kind of lived as a triad, but we weren't having sex with the third in our relationship. But we'd travel together, we'd sleep in the same bed, we'd cuddle. It was a very romantic relationship. But we just, because we didn't have tools or models for that kind of relationship, we were just kind of stuck about some of the other steps that might be involved. So for me, knowing that I could be in love with other people kind of made me good at monogamy, because if I got crushes, if I had attractions, be like, oh, those just feelings. It's just, a thing that I have. And so it didn't sort of undermine my commitment to my relationship and my feelings about my relationship.
Yeah.
And that relationship, that sort of triad, that was before Kat, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That was before I even met Kat.
Oh wow! So that was really young to be.
It was quite young, and yeah, like we didn't know the word polyamory. We didn't know about those types of relationships at all.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one thing that a lot of people in the swinging world specifically, they don't have a problem with their partners doing the sexual side of things, but for them, the once it moves into the emotional realm, that's where they start to feel that's where the maybe the jealousy introduces itself. During those couple of weeks before you went full poly, I guess, I don't know if that's the
it wasn't quite, but
was there any like jealousy or any issues that you had to work through, or was it pretty smooth sailing and a pretty smooth transition?
It's actually hard for me to imagine now, but in those early days, I had a lot of trouble whenever Kat had a new partner. I'd have a lot of jealousy and a lot of turmoil about it. And one of the things that I really learned is how much that would diffuse as soon as we talked about it. When I was trying to kind of, keep those feelings to myself, when it's like, okay, I just got to kind of get through this, it would really just kind of fester and make it worse. So that was, I would say that probably for the first year, that's a thing that I really struggled with whenever there was somebody new in your life.
Yeah. And I would say, just to make it a little more clear, that it was probably a bit over a year until we ended up like in a more emotional polyamorous kind of situation. For the year after we were doing a lot of swinging, we ended up like dating separately, but dating really casually for the most part. Mm-hmm. I was just rolling around in as many young men as would come my way, and really reveling in that sensation of being the older woman. And I guess you dated a little more specifically a few different people.
Yeah, but that again, that dating was mainly just a sexual friendship, and it wasn't until close to a year since we started having those conversations about having adventures, where I started dating a vanilla girl. And that was really kind of the thing that started flipping the switch into quote full poly.
Right.
And it was while I was dating her that we went to Desire the first time. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting a crush on somebody, and and after a few days, kind of saying, I'm really sorry about crushing on you so hard and making it weird. And she said, oh, you haven't made it weird. It's just you're poly and I'm not. And it's like her voice kind of echoed in my head for a few hours. You're poly, I'm not. You're poly, I'm not. And it's like oh my God, I'm poly. And I hadn't really thought of myself that way, and in fact kind of had an aversion to identifying as poly because of some of the kind of shitty associations that I had about what being poly was, and some of the kind of self-righteousness and sort of prescriptive polyamory that I'd seen. It had never occurred to me that poly could be whatever I wanted it to be.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that's a normal feeling too.
I had a question back a little bit about, it sounds like, Kat, when you made the transition, one of the things you did, it sounds like, was to find lots of different partners rather than a couple of select partners. Do you mind talking a little bit about that transition from roughly 20 years of monogamy to, it sounds like it was almost like a kind of set you free in a way?
Oh, for sure. I think it helped me like grab a hold of my sexuality and just feel comfortable in it for the first time. For the previous, 20 years, I had been so insecure, and, I couldn't have done non-monogamy in our 20s other than like me going in and having adventures. I wasn't okay with him going and having adventures because that felt really threatening to me at the time. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I felt comfortable enough in myself to be good with that. And so just coming into my own sexuality, coming into feeling good about being a slut, and that being like me being able to say like, I'm a slut, and that felt right as opposed to shameful.
Yeah.
Right.
that it made such a difference for me.
Yeah.
And I discovered fairly quickly that I was much more comfortable having, again, like sexual friendships, friends with benefits, fuck buddies, kind of thing that, I had a few different people that I was seeing, but none of them all that regularly. But it was repeated rather than like just going on Tinder and being like, hey, come over. Because that I need more connection than that. But it just freed me up so much to embrace who I was and to start trying things and you just let go of a lot of those hangups that I'd had.
I think that's amazing though that you resonated with the term slut, because I think that term has for a lot of people can be very negative. And I think it's amazing when people truly feel like, no, this is what I want to use to identify and be proud of it, because it is empowering. And I think that is, really cool to hear.
Thanks.
Well, it's also a useful shorthand when you're talking to somebody about, about your relationship style, to tell them that you're a slut, because, sometimes it's harder to kind of describe, well, sometimes we travel to other cities. Sometimes we have sex with people. Sometimes we have orgies, and so it's nice to just have that one label, and often they're like, oh yeah, I'm super slutty too, and so it's a fun thing to bond.
Yeah.
So the fact that it sounds like you both had slightly different styles in terms of what you were looking for and how you were approaching it, was that ever? I think a lot of people would say, well, if we're going to do this, if you're going to date somebody, I'm going to date somebody. If you're going to date two people, well, I need to date two people. Sort of that tit for tat strategy. It sounds like you guys didn't really follow that model. Was that ever a source of either conflict, or was it pretty natural and okay the whole time for you two?
I don't know that it was that much conflict. I think sometimes, you felt bad that it was so easy for me to find people, and I sometimes felt bad that you had these more intense connections. Yeah. And through this time, I also was developing a long distance relationship with someone that I ended up very emotionally invested in, but I didn't really know it until we were at Desire, and said, you're totally in love with him. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And here's this big list of reasons why. And I realized that listing all the flaws in our relationship, yet feeling exactly the same, I was like, fuck, I am in love with him. And so we sort of both had individual kind of moments at that first trip of figuring out that we were different than we thought we might be.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, I assumed that it would be casual sex. It would be like Tinder dates, and and maybe see somebody a couple times. And it turned out that I actually worked the exact opposite. That I do tend to bond more long term, even if it's just a romantic friendship. And yeah, a lot of my assumptions were very different. I think it might have helped that you did start seeing people before I did. And I think that made it easier for me. I think it would have been really hard for me to be the first one to do that.
Mm.
Do you mind talking a little bit about why that is?
Let me just tear my heart open. I actually have a hard time even knowing what I want, let alone asking for it. And so, my intuitions are always to try to anticipate and manage, what my partner wants. And so for me, if I had to kind of take that risk to be the one who's kind of stepping out onto the ice first and risking, creating challenging emotions in my partner, that would have been a really tough place for me at that time. And, sort of coming from, the monogamy hangover of, if you do something that hurts your partner, it's your fault. Even if that thing was harmless, and even if that thing was negotiated, it's your fault if there are feelings. And so I didn't yet have the tools to kind of understand, well, sometimes your things you do are going to challenge your partner's feelings, and that doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It just means that there's something to talk about and something to kind of process together.
Yeah. You just described a lot of how I feel a lot of times as well. So that as far as like trying to identify what I want and how to go about making that happen. And it's caused a lot of, I guess, more conversations in our relationship too, of because Finn wants to know and just wants me to tell him, and sometimes I can't.
Sometimes.
And it's hard.
Yeah. But we've really discovered that, talking about it is pretty much the solution to everything, or at least gets us toward the solution. Because so much of the time, it's those secret festering pieces that lead to the jealousy or the resentment or the pain, that when you acknowledge them and start talking about it, it just frees you up and you realize like, oh, I'm not a monster for feeling this. And yeah, you can then work through it together.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes there's the thought, well, there's no point in sharing this because we can't fix this. What can we, what are we actually going to say that is going to fix this? This is just feelings that I need to get over. But the reality is that sharing those feelings and seeing that the world isn't going to end because you feel this way, it takes so much of the stress off. Though a lot of the pain of those feelings is feeling like they're wrong and feeling like you need to keep them secret because the sharing of them will create distance or damage in some way. When the reality is the opposite. Sharing them gives your partner a great opportunity to show compassion and also share that the experiences that they have, that they might have had those same feelings.
Right. Yeah. Did you two always have strong communication skills within your relationship, or was it something that you had to develop once you decided to go down this path?
I think we actually had terrible communication skills and were just lucky enough to just be very compatible.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we were particularly good communicators, not about anything difficult anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
We've always been incredibly kind to one another.
Yeah.
And I think that helped us get through times that were the most difficult in our marriage. And I don't think we communicated well in a lot of those instances, but just the kindness that we have always treated each other with really just made the difference through a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think it's really incredible too that you were able to make this shift, in maybe not in spite of those skills, but that you were able, it sounds like, to develop those skills pretty quickly. Did you see, or have you seen other major shifts in the relationship between you two as you've gone through this? I mean, you had a 20-ish years of baseline model that you can kind of look back on. Have there been some pretty heavy shifts?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think we communicate about everything better. It's one of probably the most common things people say about non-monogamy is like, you're able to talk to one another once you've admitted, like, I want to fuck other people. Then
the biggest secret is out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were able to start talking about kinks that we hadn't shared. We were able to start talking about more pain that we'd experienced. And yeah, it freed up a lot of things to let us talk better. It also, through our other relationships, made us learn a lot about sort of the other side of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you learned from Iris and Dawn about like invisible femme labor, which was never something that I could articulate to you or something that you could see. But once you saw it through their eyes, you brought that back to our relationship, and it changed the way our dynamic was in a lot of the like household tasks and running our lives.
Yeah, there's I feel like I've been a better feminist throughout this whole process for sure. And and I think certainly part of it is kind of being aware of what's on the line, right? Like, being in an open relationship means that, we are taking some risks with our relationship. And so, having that awareness has made me realize, some of the kind of, kind of shitty, unconscious misogyny that I'd injected into our relationship all along. And so, just having more awareness of what I was bringing to the relationship.
You mentioned a term a minute ago, invisible femme labor. For people who aren't familiar with that, possibly ourselves, do you mind?
I know what it is, but could you share for our listeners?
Yeah.
It's basically all the things that typically the woman or the femme in the relationship does to keep things running, like keeping track of the groceries. If you happen to have kids, knowing the schedule and who's at soccer and who's at ballet and what happens there. And are we out of toilet paper? And is it your mom's birthday? And like all of that stuff. Plus, the little cooking and cleaning and the litter box and stuff that it just sort of magically happens a certain amount of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because as women, or if we were raised as women, we were socialized that this is the stuff you do.
Right.
And most guys are socialized that this is shit they don't have to think about because it magically happened.
Well, and a lot of male socialized people, they're coming into relationships, their defense is always, I will do whatever you want me to do. I will do my fair share. Just ask and tell me what needs doing. And the reality is that the whole process of thinking about what needs doing and then initiating that conversation with your partner, and then that is labor. That's management, and that and it's it is a really typical thing for men of my generation to just kind of allow their partner to, over time, accumulate the majority of the domestic labor, because it just ends up sliding that way because we allow them to do the management. And and sort of early in this process, I remember having this conversation with a friend of mine and about sort of the shittiness of it, and and kind of like nobody likes to do that shit. And so it's an easy thing to just let somebody take over that stuff.
Yeah.
But I've been committed to not being that way anymore, and one of the kind of hacks that I do is, it's like, when I think of something, I do it. And so sometimes it means that I do the thing where I half start 4 different things because I've kind of wandered around the house doing that first thing. And so I got to kind of backtrack finishing those tasks. It's not super efficient, but if I think, okay, I'll do that later, later is never. I will never do that thing if I'm always going to do that later on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense. I think too, finding that line between, I guess maybe in my own world, there's certain things that are important to one person in the relationship that aren't important to the other. And I think that maybe is sort of a different, taking it to a different level.
I can give you a good example. Putting the toilet paper roll on the toilet paper handle thing. Why some people don't care about that, others do.
And I don't think it's me letting you do the work. It's, I don't care if it ever got on. I could remove the toilet paper spinner thing and it wouldn't matter to me.
This is not our interview.
But we
Outtakes,
have also,
outtakes.
through some of this, figured out like that tiny little thing that you don't give a shit about, but your partner gives a shit about, just makes their life better enough
Yeah,
that it's worth doing.
exactly. And I think that's the point, is even if it's something that it's not important to me, knowing that it's important to her and then being willing to do that thing, not because I need it done, but because I know she wants it done. That's the reason to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I just got to remove the thing and then it won't be possible.
No more toilet paper, bidets only.
Yeah. Bidets only. I like that.
Just put it on the damn roll. I go through so many of my friends' houses putting toilet paper on the roll.
I know.
Well, you're probably not going to want to come over to our house.
No, she'll be fine. I'm there.
So one thing you did touch on earlier is in the title of your book, the word anxious, and probably relating to anxiety, and you mentioned it being a mental illness that you're struggling with. I guess if you don't mind talking about, I think there's probably people out there who look at non-monogamy in general and say, well, I could never do it because I'm this or I'm that, whether it's too old, too young, too big, too small, whatever their excuse is. I guess, do you mind talking about it from your perspective in terms of how you've navigated it and what it looks like for you?
For sure. It's definitely been a real challenge. Non-monogamy is stressful. You know, there's no doubt about it. It's stressful. And a lot of that stress is really good stress. You know, going to sexy parties, you know, having new experiences. You know, there's so much good stress in it, but that is also stress. And there is also the stress that goes along with like new people and new relationships, and you know, you're messaging with this person and did they get you back, and oh, I can see the dots but now they've stopped, and you know, all of that kind of stuff that it's definitely ramped up my anxiety over the past few years. And
Sure.
So, you know, that's been a real challenge, and I have really had to like do a lot of work to realize when I'm being, you know, reasonable, like when it's just like, okay, this is a thing that it's legitimate to be upset about or worried about, and this is, you know, a thing that is just my anxiety out of control, and I need to do some cognitive behavioral therapy exercises or like just talk myself through it to, you know, get out of that spiral.
Right.
And, you know, it has definitely been a real challenge. And I think because the anxiety piece has been ramped up so much, it also, the depression piece that had never usually been a huge deal for me, I think because I was a little off balance a lot of the time, that allowed the depression piece to come in more. And over the past few years, I had been really quite depressed and hadn't even realized it until we got back from Desire last year. And I was able to reevaluate like my feelings from the whole trip and from quite a while back of like, oh yeah, no, I'm actually super depressed. And then getting on medication and looking at things differently and getting some therapy and just working through in a way that allowed me to deal with everything better.
Right.
Yeah, I've struggled with depression lifelong, and you know, and in fact, a few years before we opened our relationship, I had a pretty extended, what I see in hindsight was a pretty extended major depressive disorder episode that lasted close to a year, and what I've come to notice is that there is actually a fair amount of mental illness in non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And I think what it is there's a lot of people who, who are questioning and looking at things, and so I think that can lend itself to non-monogamy. It's the same reason there's a lot of geeks and nerds in non-monogamy, because they're already kind of off of the kind of the main track of the status quo, and so I do feel like there is a higher instance of typical mental illness in non-monogamy, and we just don't necessarily see that. A lot of what's modeled for us in the literature and podcasts is very idealized. It's very happy. It's very much about the party, about the sex, and about the fun and the sort of the infinite love. And we don't always see some of the deep challenges that come with non-monogamy and with struggling with your own mental illness and trying to support partners with mental illness as well.
Right. Have you found that the skills that you've developed after opening your relationship up have helped you, both of you, be able to either support each other better or handle your own internal conversations better, or has non-monogamy magnified those issues?
I think sort of both.
Both all at once.
Yeah, because I think, we're communicating better and we're owning our shit in a way that, like, I'm able to be like, I know this is my issue, but I'm feeling this. Yeah. So it might be, him staying overnight at his girlfriend's, twice in a week. And I'm having the feels about that, but I understand that they're not doing anything wrong. And in fact, I'm happy for them to have extra time together because they don't get a huge amount. And so I'm having like that feeling, but just owning that, like, this is my own pain about this, but they're not doing anything wrong, but it also is amplifying the pain and the loneliness and, that kind of back and forth thing that happens. So I think really it's both.
I think we also have developed a lot of language about making it safe for the other person to be irrational if they're suffering in their mental illness in particular. So when we sense that the other person, maybe has something unreasonable that they want to talk about, prompting that and making that safe to share that kind of thing. Whereas I think in the past we would suffer alone through a lot of that thing. I think that we've gotten better at sharing those burdens together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's nice. I mean, and it's probably helpful to have a partner who can relate to maybe some of those issues, so you don't feel maybe as alone in that.
Yeah, and I think having come at this from such a long-term stable anchored relationship is freed up a lot of when we do have issues. It's not like, oh my God, my relationship could be over. Like we don't generally have any of those kinds of feelings. It's like, oh, we're having this fight and we need to work it out.
Yeah, and sometimes there will still be deep fears about it, but the depth of those fears, has a limit. We don't fear about the whole world coming crashing down, but I think that there's still some of those. I mean, a lot of mental illness is about fear, both depression and anxiety, and so I think there is sometimes that fear. Oh, I could wreck this. I could, this could impugn other relationships that are really important to me. This could kind of, fuck up the, sort of the plan and life that we built together. But I don't think that, I think that having that faith that, our relationship is going to endure regardless really, really helps.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. I think it's a really important topic to bring up too. Like you said, most of the general things you hear about non-monogamy in general are all happy and exciting, and that's amazing. That's a really good part of it. But there's another part that is not necessarily as fun and needs to work through things. And it's a lot more common than I think people tend to hear about.
Well, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And, well, here's just an example. Whenever you talk to people about their trips to Desire, usually what you'll hear about, it's so amazing. There's so many great people. It's a wonderful experience. Some people describe it as, this is my favorite place in the world. It's my favorite week of the year. But usually what those people won't tell you, they won't talk about the midweek crash when you're burnt out and you need time to yourself. They won't talk about some of the challenging feelings that might come up there, and so all of the great things that they said about Desire are true for them, but it's also a slice of what's going on, and and the big picture is hiding some of the trickier stuff, and to Kat's credit, I think what really speaks to people about Kat's writing is the vulnerability that they show in that writing, the kind of the honesty that they reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I was going to say the most common comment I get about my writing, about blog posts or the book, or even about our podcast, is people saying, "I thought I was the only one."
Mm-hmm.
And just saying, like, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one."
Yeah.
And it just frees people up to admit to the stuff that it's challenging and vulnerable and scary, and feeling less alone in those feelings. You just feel safer. You feel connected in a way, and you don't feel like such a freak.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. You feel known.
Yeah.
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah, I think maybe, we talk a lot about Desire because we had some amazing experiences there, and it was one of the things that really helped, I don't want to say glue us back together, but it was a really a shot of energy in our relationship when we needed it. And the thing I think that the advice we always give to people when they're talking about going for the first time is, make sure to take time for yourselves, and time for yourselves as a couple, and time for yourself as an individual throughout the week to just, you don't have to constantly be a part of every little thing that's happening, and don't be afraid to go take a nap, and let your partner sit in the hot tub by themselves with other people and go take a nap. I mean, that's a completely okay thing to do. And I know, some people are extreme extroverts, and they feed off of the energy, and for them it's no problem. But for other people, they're introverted or maybe not quite as outgoing. It's a lot
of social energy.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's definitely taxing.
It's a lot of social energy, and and it is really tough to take a break, because the FOMO will just eat you up so hard. But it's like, you can't fuck everybody.
That is that's true.
And I think, one of the most interesting things, I think Desire is a great way to highlight this about what is one of often most challenging things in non-monogamy, and, especially as we move toward polyamory, is the thing that I've gotten jealous about is not my partner fucking other people. It's glimpses of intimacy in other situations.
Mm-hmm.
So Desire, it hit me so hard the first year we were there, seeing him kissing people in the buffet line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So places you're not expecting to see it, and you see it. Like if you're in an orgy, you kind of expect to see it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you've established the level of intimacy it's going to be. So seeing them kissing a person, that's a really reasonable thing that's going on, and it doesn't ping for you. And in fact, you're probably like, yeah. But seeing him kissing someone, and just like the focus and attention, like in that buffet line, and the way that, he's touching her head and looking at her, like it just hit me in this way that really threw my world into a bit of a spin for a bit. Sure. And that has happened a few times in, the the non-monogamy, journey that we have done is, hearing him with inside jokes with people or pet names or like things like that is like, it immediately others you. Like you're suddenly outside and it, even though this person, they have this relationship that they're building together, you're like, oh yeah, this is happening. But those little glimpses of those intimacies are the things that have always been the most freaky to me. Like that's the most threatening and that I've had the most angst about.
Well, especially if he's supposed to be getting you another piece of cake and he's up there making out.
I know, right?
That would cross a line for me.
Run.
So, I completely can understand that would catch you off guard, I think.
Oh yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's something that people don't think about if, that they may be in that situation until they actually have happen.
Yeah, if you're really used to your lives being very compartmentalized between those things, it can be a big shock.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, Kat, you've mentioned a couple of times that you have a blog and the book and everything. How did that evolve for you? Have you always been writing and interested in that, or has that been a newer passion over the last couple of years?
I think I've always written on and off. Back in the early days of the internet, before they were even called blogs, I did some writing. I had a website that I would write like rants on and that sort of thing. So I've always done a certain amount of writing, and a few years before we became non-monogamous, I did a lot of writing of slash fiction.
Okay.
So I wrote a lot of fan fiction porn, and so that was really fun. And when we started exploring non-monogamy, I was just writing, I think, just to keep myself kind of sane, because I tend to process that way. Yeah. So I work my way through stuff by writing it down. And so I was really pleased and surprised when I went back and started compiling everything for the book, was that I had started writing immediately. That like I wrote about our first threesome, I wrote about our first swinging experience. I had like all of this stuff down, and I was often reading it and going, "We did that? like is that how we did it? Really?" And so it was really cool to see the evolution of our relationship and how we approached things through that writing. And so I was really glad that I had that like documentation of it. And so most of that was just kind of casually, like, on a like Blogspot account kind of thing. And then had been talking to Cooper about it and asking him like what sort of blogging sites were the best and that sort of thing. And him suggesting that I submit some writing to their editor to check out and see if it might be a fit for Life on the Swing Set. And, she ended up really liking my work. And so it gave me a wider platform to have my writing out there. And then as we gradually ended up getting our own website and doing work there. So yeah, it's been with us like the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. I was curious, was there things that either or both of you have discovered throughout this process that you didn't know you were into at
oh
the
my
beginning?
God.
All the things.
Yeah. I often paraphrase, Archer, do you want fetishes? Because that's how you get fetishes. It's amazing. I was actually pretty sexually repressed most of my life, and so this whole process, this whole journey, has unlocked a lot of that, and so yeah, it's pretty crazy actually. All the stuff that I assumed I was never into.
Yeah. And I think with my sexuality, I'd always, like, once I heard the phrase, like, heteroromantic bisexual, I was like, oh, yeah, that's me. Like, I fall in love with guys, but I'm really attracted to everyone of every gender. And then we had a girlfriend and suddenly I was, I was in love with a woman, and okay, well, maybe I'm also biromantic, but this is really confusing. And then when that didn't work out, and for me, we were a triad for a while, and now Flick and Iris are together, but they and I are good friends. I'm like, oh, okay, no, maybe I was mistaken. I'm not actually biromantic, and now I'm dating this other woman who seems to be sort of my main partner at the moment, and I'm like, crap, like, come on, sexuality, like, figure yourself out and let's be consistent.
Probably the kind of widest exploration that's opened up for me has been in BDSM and in dominance, because that was something that for all my life I'd kind of been ooged about, and it wasn't until we started kind of opening things up that I really realized that ooginess was internalized shame at the attraction that I had to that, and really seeing that it wasn't the kind of dark and sinister thing that it's often portrayed as, or it's not always the kind of goofy, ridiculous thing that it's also often portrayed as, especially in mainstream media with male submission. It's always a joke. It's always a punchline, and so seeing that there is a whole world of DS that doesn't fall into what we've seen in mainstream media or even typically in porn, really made me realize that I didn't need to be something that I didn't want to be in order to explore that part of my life.
So you, to clarify, you found yourself identifying more in like submissive roles?
No, more dominant.
Okay.
And for me, the association was always with dominance as a form of male violence. And so, just becoming more educated about BDSM and seeing that that's not the case, and that it is it's as loving and as as caretaking as any other form of sexuality, and and seeing that there were ways for me to express that where it didn't have to be like this this dom asshole, and I could express myself through that.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah. And Kat, I know you mentioned that your sexuality has been something you've been just trying to figure out and I guess experiment with a little bit over your journey. And now you told us at the beginning that you have been using the pronouns they and them. Do you mind just telling the listeners a little bit about why you decided to do that, and for anybody that might be interested or feel similarly?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. It kind of hit me out of the blue a little bit. And we had some friends who identified as non-binary or gender fluid, and I'd never really gotten it until I got it, and I think it stopped feeling, just as accurate to think of myself as a woman. And, I definitely have all of the, technical parts to make that happen, but it just started feeling less accurate. And I think I've always, as a kid was like a tomboy, and a lot of that is really typical. But have always really liked playing with dynamics of dressing kind of masculine, or wearing a tux to an event that everyone's expecting me to be in a dress, and like just messing with those expectations. And at the time I had mostly just thought of it was kind of about the taboo of it, and just getting this sort of buzz out of that, of, you know, wearing a packer when I'm going out for dinner, and like no one knows that, you know, I've got a cock while I'm walking around, and that kind of thing. I'd always sort of just thought it was maybe the taboo buzz of it, but realizing that just sometimes it felt really right to have a cock. And I sort of realized that maybe she wasn't entirely accurate. And it's kind of funny because I look back at, you know, having released the book in October, and it's all like she, her, and, you know, talking about being a woman. And at the time, like, very much identified cis woman. But now I'm really feeling kind of genderqueer, and exploring that, you know, is feeling good, although kind of strange. But I think also being in my mid-40s, I have less angst about exploring it. And if it's not right, kind of going, yeah, I tried that. Cool. That didn't work. Let's go back. Or whatever sort of the path takes it. I feel a lot more comfortable to try it out and see if it feels good. If it feels good. And if it doesn't, then I don't have the, like, the world is going to end kind of feelings that I probably would have had in my 20s.
Yeah.
And these words didn't exist in my 20s, you know, like we, you know, the evolution of language and culture and of sexuality and gender, like, this is really so much of it only the past like 5 years or so that it has really exploded into the zeitgeist and the common, you know, experience of people.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think that's really interesting, and I think it's amazing that you're willing to let yourself explore that, and like you said, if it's not right, you're okay with that. You can go back, and but maybe it is right, and maybe it's what you really want to move forward with. So, thanks for sharing that. I guess kind of I don't know what to say. Thanks for sharing that piece of information about yourself.
No worries.
So one thing that we've been asking, it's kind of a newer question, not to be jumping all over the place, but as you probably have experienced, there are some comical moments within the realm of either swinging or group situations, or even just on your own with partners. Do you mind sharing each of you like a blooper, like one of your favorite bloopers from something that's happened to you or because of you,
or that you've seen too?
Yeah, sure.
Oh boy.
A blooper. I can't think of it.
Or just a funny moment too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's a funny story. We were actually at Desire at one of the beds by the hot tub, and we were having a threesome with someone, and
oh God, yes.
Yeah, and I was fucking the very special guest star. I was on top of her and inside her, and some friends of ours wandered up and started talking to us, and you know, so you know, they'd had a few drinks, and
a few.
They were kind of hammered, and so they're talking to us, kind of not even really cluing into the fact that we were. I'm actually in the middle of somebody.
Yeah. And I was like lying next to them, like with my hand jammed inside myself.
You know, and so we're looking at them while they're talking, and they're talking, and finally I just kind of very slowly at first just went back to fucking, and you know, and the gal that walked up is like, it's like, oh, I guess you're kind of in the middle of something here. And then went back to talking to us, and you know, and so we're still looking at her, but we're also kind of going back to what we were doing, while, you know, kind of politely continuing to acknowledge her presence and that she's talking, and then she's like, oh, but you know, I guess I should let you get back to it, and then just kind of stood there just kind of watching us for a couple more minutes, just kind of perving on the fact that we were fucking in front of her. But and then eventually, wandered on for the rest of their evening.
Yeah.
Well, at least they didn't make it awkward.
And she was just randomly like telling us stories about being in the disco and about someone getting like, a hat that they won for the dance contest, and like just completely random.
Just random stories about what would have been going on all night.
Yeah, like totally disregarding the fact that you guys are in the middle of something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to use that move this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Not even drunk. I'm just going to do it to people.
But just kind of a funny sex moment of having people here visiting from out of town, and me coming down with about a vertigo, and it's brought on by movement, and But these people were only here for a couple days, and this person I'm like in love with and lives far away, and we only have this time, and Flick and Iris, took the gal of the couple like off on an adventure, so the guy and I can have time to ourselves. But I'm so fucking dizzy, and we were having sex, and he's lying on top of me, and I'm like holding onto the bed for dear life, feeling like I'm gonna fall off the earth.
Oh my gosh.
And he outweighed me by a good 100 pounds or more, and he's just like, I don't think you're going anywhere. But
that's wild.
had to hold on the entire time. And
yeah. Oh man, for anyone who hasn't experienced vertigo. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, can't let go, flying off into space.
Yeah. Yeah, for anyone who hasn't experienced that, it's a messed up feeling, because actually just a few
months ago,
like a month ago, I had it for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And we were laying in bed, and I like went to roll over, and I literally felt the bed flip upside down.
Yeah, you like grabbed onto me for dear life.
I grabbed onto her, and I thought we were gonna fall. And it was the most bizarre feeling I've ever felt in my life. So, yeah, we didn't have a lot of sex that day.
No.
Yeah, your animal brain doesn't know that you're not upside down. It's just gonna grab on.
Yeah. You think it feels like you're gonna fall off the earth. It is really a crazy sensation. But damn it, I was gonna have that sex, and I did, and it was weird and confusing. But we had it.
We're gonna have this sex if I need to hold on and cry all night.
Determination.
Perfect. Well, maybe before we let you go, do you mind telling people a little bit about what your podcast is about, and what the book, maybe just roughly what the book is about, and then we'll let you guys get on with your wet coast evening.
So the podcast is about sex and relationships, and about non-monogamy of every variety. So we try to just kind of cover all of our own experiences, but also kind of conceptually ideas and theories, and about non-monogamy and sex. Some of our episodes have been about different elements of relationships, and we did an episode about anal sex and group sex, throwing parties, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't only tell the good stuff.
Yes.
We talk about all the times that we have messed everything up, and so I think being really revealing of ourselves, and that it's not always shiny, happy, and fun.
Yeah.
That's
I think if we were people who made mistakes, we would share those as well.
We never do.
So, anyway,
definitely our fair share of mistakes.
So the book you said it was a memoir, and it sounds like you kind of went back and pulled a lot of true stories from your experiences. I guess that's what a memoir is. So
it's basically
you have correctly defined memoir.
I'm on it tonight.
It's basically the story of our first 3 years in non-monogamy. And so it starts, from the very beginning and our first thoughts about how we even got there, and talking about the origin story, and then going through our first threesome, our first swinging experiences, my first heartbreak, and just kind of working our way through all of that. There's lots of heartfelt angst and pain and revelations, but there's a lot of really, really dirty sex.
Super dirty.
Super dirty. And so, there's a lot of that. There's something for everybody. And I talk about discovering that I'm a squirter, and then, all of the very soggy adventures that follow that.
And why can't I stop squirting?
Yes.
I'm so dehydrated.
Great thing I want to try. And oh my God, I'm disintegrating like someone at the end of Indiana Jones. It definitely follows the path and meeting Iris and falling in love, and then discovering all the stuff that wasn't working, and going through breakups and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of really deep emotional stuff and a lot of vulnerability, but there's also a lot of dirty sex. So
very cool.
And what is the name of it, just so that listeners know?
It's called Yelling in Pasties: The Wet Coast Confessions of an Anxious Slut.
Perfect.
And you can get it on Amazon, ebook, paperback, all the good stuff.
Yeah, the podcast is at onthewetcoast.com, and you can also find links to buying the book on your favorite platform there.
Yeah,
cool.
Perfect. Well, we'll put links to all of it in our show notes for anybody who wants to go hunt it all up.
Yeah.
And unless there's anything else you want to make sure.
Well, are you still writing your blog too?
I am. It's a lot less frequent. More recently, I think I was focused on getting the book out, and then I ended up writing a novel in April. And also, went through a pretty severe depressive episode that even had suicidal ideations, and so went through a pretty scary time. So my creativity was a little limited. But I'm getting back into it. And it's I've also recently had a breakup, and it's kind of the thing I want to write about, but because the other person is also on the internet, I can't really. And so sort of every time I'm trying to get into something, I'm like, I can't actually say this stuff. And so I'm trying to write some fun articles about learning to fist someone and stuff like that to even though I want to do the angsty stuff.
Yeah.
What you should do is actually write the angsty stuff and then just send it out to select people. So it's like bespoke blogging, and
Cool.
Perfect. Well, unless there's anything else you really want to make sure you say on our show, I can let you guys get on with your evening.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we're going to be at Sex Down South. So if anybody wants to come up and say hi and has any questions for us, or wants to talk about the podcast, or talk about dirty sex things, you can find us there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And approach us, because we're shy.
Yes.
Sounds good.
If it looks like I'm standoffish, it's probably just because I'm terrified.
It's okay. We're the same.
We're very similar, so we know what you're going.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. And we'll let you have a great evening.
Yeah, thanks so much. We're back, and thanks again to Kat and Flick. I think that we had it was a really interesting discussion. We talked with them about some things like mental health that we hadn't really covered in this podcast before. So we were really happy to have them on and have them bring up some topics that are sometimes difficult to talk about. Yeah,
and we even learned some new terms. And I have to go do some home improvement and remove all the toilet paper roll things in our apartment.
No.
So Anyway, next week we've got another amazing interview, just like last week and just like the week before that, with John and Cindy, a really cool couple who reached out to us on our website, actually on Twitter, and I don't know, they just have a super awesome energy. Not that everyone else doesn't, but they have a super awesome energy, and we're excited to be having their interview in 1 week.
Yeah, I think that's it. You can find us on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com or on Twitter or Cassidy under the screen name NNM Podcast. And please reach out. We'd love to hear from anybody.
Did you introduce ourselves at the beginning?
I did.
Okay, then we don't.
But I did forget the website at the intro.
Well, you just told them now.
I know.
It out.
It's all good.
Alrighty, see everybody in a week.
Bye.